welcome. My name is Kelly Anderson, and this is Fanimated, the animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. If you're new around here, you'll know that usually I have one or more guests on the show to talk deeply about a specific topic, but that won't be happening today. In this, our first episode of 2020 and the new decade, I will be flying solo to heap upon you my personal favorite animated media of the past 10 years. Also, unlike normal, this will be a spoiler-free episode in the hopes that some of these titles will spark your interest. I highly recommend that you go and experience them all for yourself. And I want to thank everyone for their patience, as I know we are well into 2020 by this point, but I wanted to make sure this episode was well thought out, and since it is a deviation from the normal layout, it took me a while to piece together all my thoughts. Now, as for the structure of this episode, I have 3 top 10 lists. The top 10 anime, the top 10 Western animated series, and the top 10 animated films. So, in order for these titles to qualify, they needed to have first aired or premiered or been released within the time frame of January 1st, 2010 and December 31st, 2019. And I do have titles that are fitting barely within both sides of the spectrum, so that's pretty fun. Also note that I have not watched every single thing that has been released during the 2010s. I'm sure there are tons of worthy titles that I won't mention simply because I didn't get the chance to see them. I would deeply appreciate it if you would let me know which titles those are by emailing me at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. I'm always on the lookout for recommendations. Now, before we jump in, I also wanted to announce for those who don't follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Fanimated Podcast and get our updates, Fanimated will be going on tour this year. We will be hosting some panels, talking about animation, and generally geeking out like usual. Our first stop is in a couple of weeks at ConPyCon in Omaha, Nebraska from February 7th through February 9th. Emma Martin and I will be hosting a panel about Kiki's delivery service on Friday, February 7th at 5 p.m. in panel room 2. So be sure to stop by and say hello. Our other stops this year include Convergence in Minneapolis, Minnesota from August 20th to 23rd and Icon in Cedar Rapids, Iowa from October 9th through 11th. More information about our panels will be coming soon, so to stay up to date, please consider following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Fanimated Podcast. You can also visit our website at www.fanimated.weebly.com for more info. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's begin this exploration of my favorite animated titles of the 2010s. We'll start with the top 10 anime of the decade. There have been so many phenomenal new anime in the last 10 years that is really hard to know where to start. This category was certainly the hardest for me to rank, as I feel so many of them qualify for the number 1 seat. But let's just dive into it. The 2010s was a decade of isekai, as the genre gained immense popularity with shows like Sword Art Online and The Rise of the Shield Hero. There doesn't seem to be a single anime season that didn't garner in a new anime taking a stab at the genre. If you are unfamiliar, isekai is a broad genre of manga and anime in which a normal person from our normal world, quite often a nerdy shut-in to connect with the viewing audience, is suddenly whisked away to start a new life in a fantasy world that often runs on video game-like mechanics. Think The Wizard of Oz, but with more fight scenes. Although there are plenty of isekai anime out there that create fun and dynamic twists on the subject, The Devil is a Part-Timer and Ascendance of a Bookworm come to mind, there is one that takes the cake as my favorite isekai anime of the decade. Re:Zero, which first aired in June 2016, starts off this list at number 10. Like most isekai, Re:Zero follows the genre formula as our lazy, nerdy protagonist suddenly finds himself dropped in the middle of a fantasy world of magic and RPG fantasies. But unlike most other isekai, Subaru Natsuki, our wayward protagonist, is not a proficient swordsman, keen intelligence strategizer, or given any boosts or special skills of any sort. The only thing he is able to do is, well, die. And die a lot. In fact, when his lack of knowledge about the world, people, and magic systems in which he finds himself ultimately lead to his gruesome death, he gets magically reset back to before any of the injuries occurred. Almost like a save point in a video game. By this way of painful repetition, we slowly join Subaru on his journey to become a better hero and, more importantly, a better person with every fatal blow. It certainly makes for a thrilling ride, albeit sometimes extremely frustrating when you see Subaru having to start over so many times. But the characters and world building are totally worth it, and it is far and away the best isekai and one of the best anime of the decade. Coming in at number 9 is a little anime about an orphaned, sword-wielding protagonist who slays supernatural beings on a mission to save humanity. But it may not be the one you're thinking of. Beyond the Boundary first aired in October 2013 and was part of my early dives into the medium. It follows the relationship of Murray Kuriyama, a spirit hunter who is tasked with slaying a half-spirit named Akito Kanbara. Their lives become entangled as they fight together against their respective pasts and a great evil that threatens the balance of the world. Beyond the Boundary is a beautiful piece of animation and storytelling that provides high-quality fight scenes in a supernatural atmosphere while also playing host to excellent comedy in its character interactions. Heck, there's even a really wonderful episode in which our main protagonists perform a fully choreographed karaoke number in order to slay a spirit. With the best of these layered genres and a deeply and organically grown connection between the main couple, Beyond the Boundary was certain to make it onto my top 10 list of the decade. Now let's climb fully aboard the fluffy romance train because our next 4 favorite anime on this list will make you laugh and sob uncontrollably as they follow some of my favorite relationships of the medium. Number 8 brings us Snow White with the Red Hair, a summer 2015 anime that only graced us with 1 season but instantly turned me into a manga reader. Follow Shirayuki, a humble herbalist from the kingdom of Tanvaroon, as she escapes from a selfish prince, finds freedom in the neighboring kingdom of Clariness, and works hard to become a court herbalist. The connections to its source material are rare. Yes, there is a poison apple, but Shirayuki is not the one who eats it. But the bright and hopeful fantasy world is straight out of a fairy tale. One of the most wholesome and vibrant anime of the decade, Snow White with the Red Hair captured my heart with its truly humorous characters, imaginative world, and delicate romantic flavor that melts my heart every time I watch it. This may not be the most groundbreaking show out there. The animation is straightforward, and the story is never full of really heavy conflict, but this slower, softer pace is exactly why I love it. Although the story cuts viewers short, the manga is a superb read and I relish every new chapter. If you are looking for something beautiful to sink into, where the characters grow and develop slowly, and in which the stakes never seem too high, this is the anime for you. It's also super great for families and anyone who likes Disney princesses. So go brew a cup of tea and savor this little morsel of a show that is sure to bring joy to your day. The first, but not the last, 2019 anime on my list is Fruits Basket, the newest anime to get the Full Metal Alchemist treatment by getting a fully fleshed out remake that follows the manga much more closely. With a deeply dedicated fan base that's been rampant since the manga released in 1998, I'd be surprised if you haven't heard of it, but if you are in that minority, let me give you the basic rundown of the plot. Toru Honda is a high school student who naturally finds joy in every situation and traits worth loving in every person she comes across. Despite her mother's death, she is determined to finish high school and work hard so as not to become a burden on others. When she befriends the Soma family, she discovers they are cursed by the spirits of the Chinese zodiac, And as she learns just what that means in their relationships and lives, the ripples of her patience and kindness build into a storm that is destined to change everyone around her. If you'd like my thoughts on the original 2001 anime, I have a whole episode on it in which I discussed its excellence. But as for the remake, I couldn't ask for more. The animation is beautiful. It mirrors the manga's more complex layerings in the plot, and they brought back the original voice cast. Honestly, if you haven't watched the 2001 Fruits Basket, I don't think you need to. Just start with the remake and follow Toru, Yuki, and Kyo on this poignant, epic story of forgiveness and redemption. The number 6 spot goes to Violet Evergarden, a short anime based off the light novel of the same name and one of the few good anime to find a home on Netflix in the US. Violet Evergarden, an abandoned child turned soldier, wakes up in a hospital to find that her arms have been replaced with mechanical prosthetics. She struggles to find her place in the world, a world reminiscent of post-World War I Europe, where she has no family, no war to fight, and, to a highly trained and efficient soldier, no purpose. Having grown up and been manipulated as a weapon of destruction, Violet lacks general social skills and cultural understanding. Her curiosity and deep desire to understand her own human emotions lead her to become an auto memory doll, a service in which women learn to craft enchanting letters for a variety of clients. This leads her to write letters for various circumstances, from love letters to final words. Violet and the audience explore the human condition and delve into what makes our human experience worth living. Violet Evergarden is one of those stories that leaves you absolutely breathless and causes you to meditate on its themes long after the series ends. Every episode, we are introduced to new characters and shown how love plays a part in their lives. Along the way, we get snippets of Violet's tragic past and the true reason she is plagued with a heavy heart. The story is breathtaking and merits the number 6 spot all on its own. But that's not even mentioning the stunning, fluid shots produced by Kyoto Animation Studios and the poignant music by a host of master artists. Violet Evergarden blew me away, and I know that it'll blow you away too. Keeping with the theme of love, the 2016 show Yuri on Ice sits at number 5 as one of the best anime of the decade, thanks to its beautifully animated skating sequences, piercing score, and groundbreaking love story. Yuri Katsuki is a Japanese figure skater who puts his career on hold after a crippling defeat at the Grand Prix final. The story starts off with Yuri visiting a childhood friend, Yuko, and she secretly films him as he perfectly mirrors a skating routine performed by his idol and inspiration, Viktor Nikiforov. After Yuko posts the video online, it catches the attention of Viktor, who leaves Russia to offer himself as Yuri's coach and revive his skating career. Now, I'm not usually one for sports anime, but this is one you just can't beat. Although some of the skating scenes could have used a little polish, they do their job extremely well, evoking deep emotions from the audience and pulling us into the minds of every skater who competes. The show even gained recognition from the professional skating community as multiple skaters praised the show online. The music not only fills my head but penetrates my soul every time I listen to it, and the characters are memorable and heartwarming. Not to mention the exquisite direction and careful crafting of diversity and acceptance that creates organic and natural characters of various genders, sexualities, and nationalities. Yuri on Ice will blow you away and make you want to jump off the couch and go skating yourself. That is, of course, after you've binged the entire series. With only 4 more anime to go, I want to point out that each and every one of these last shows on my list could be considered in the number 1 spot for various reasons. Each of them have expanded on the animated medium, built upon their manga counterparts, and have influenced the entirety of anime culture this decade. However, I still needed to order them somehow, so again, these are the top 4 anime of the decade, according to my own personal preference. At number 4, we have My Hero Academia. If you are any kind of anime viewer, chances are you are already watching this, but for those who don't follow one of the most viewed anime of the decade, My Hero, or Hero Aka, or Boku no Hero Academia drops viewers into a world much like our own, but in which 80% of the population is born with superhuman unnatural abilities, or superpowers, known as quirks. The society has developed into one of supervillains who take what they want and their hero counterparts who work with the government and aid the police in the capture and restraint of these wayward quirk wielders. Within this superhero society, our protagonist, Izuku Midoriya, studies and analyzes all manner of heroes and villains in the hopes that he will one day become a hero himself, despite his lack of a quirk. Regardless of this clear disadvantage, Izuku races into a dangerous villain situation to save a classmate. This stroke of blind heroism inspires the world's #1 hero, All Might, to choose Izuku as his successor and the new wielder of his power, All for One. The following seasons expand on the faults and calamities of this world of quirks as our hero-in-training protagonist enters the best school for heroes and, along with his classmates, fights for justice in opposition to the League of Villains. First premiering in 2016 at the height of Hollywood's current obsession with superhero content, My Hero Academia found a huge place in the heart of Western anime culture. This is one no-holds-barred superhero shonen jump adventure that kicks every craving an action fan could desire, and it does it with depth and direction equal to any Marvel counterpart. Whether or not it will outlast the superhero culture of the decade remains to be seen, but with a 4th season well underway and no signs of slowing down, there is no denying that My Hero Academia is one of the most well-loved anime of the 2010s. My number 3 spot belongs to another show that took the entire anime culture by storm with its impeccably animated fight choreography. Attack on Titan first aired back in the spring of 2013, blowing everyone out of the water with its terrorizing, yet gorgeous, visuals and tightly woven apocalyptic storytelling. Set in a world where giant monsters called Titans roam the land, hungry only for human flesh, the last of humanity hides behind enormous walls that have protected them for centuries. Among them is Eren Yeager, a kid bent on becoming a member of the Scout Regiment, part of humanity's frontline defense against the Titans, and the only people who are allowed to leave the confines of the walls. At first only propulsed by his longing to see what lies beyond the gates, Eren's eagerness to join the Scouts turns to justified rage to avenge his mother who is eaten when the colossal Titan breaks the walls surrounding his hometown. The series follows Eren and his friends as they join the fight against the Titan onslaught, discovering mysteries about what exists beyond the walls as well as what lies in wait within them. Another more than satisfying action anime, Attack on Titan sits as one of the best in the genre, although I should give it a sound gore warning. Personally, although the hype for the show was unrelenting, it took me 3 years to power through the gruesome first episode and into the deeper story beyond. And boy, what a story it is! Always surprising me, this show balances action and mystery with political drama and fantastical world building. Not to mention the phenomenal camera work and cinematography that solidifies Attack on Titan's place on my top anime list. The only thing that can make it soar higher would be a main protagonist that I actually cared about. Good thing Armin is there to pick up the slack. Now, I'm not usually one for horror anime, or horror anything for that matter, but sitting at the number 2 spot is a thriller that immediately hooked me into its fast-paced and gripping narrative. The Promised Neverland first aired in January of 2019 and instantly captured my attention with a twisting plot and refreshing character dynamics. The show follows a family of orphaned children, all under the age of 12, who live with their caretaker in a peaceful, idyllic countryside estate. However, as the first episode states with a spine-tingling final scene, all is not as it seems for these happy-go-lucky orphans. Instead of a charming life of freedom and discovery, eventually ending in being adopted into a loving home, they find they are actually on a farm, bred for their intelligence and large brains that are eventually sold to the demons of the world as an appetizing delicacy. In awe and disgust at having discovered the truth, the oldest children, the optimistic and athletic Emma, the calm and rational Norman, and the analytical and withdrawn Ray, are forced to find a way out of their cage along with the rest of the children without raising the suspicions of their quote-unquote mother, Isabella. This hair-raising premise results in a captivating show that constantly throws me to the edge of my seat. The dynamics between our trio of protagonists, along with the discovery of hidden secrets throughout their adventure, easily rate this as a top anime of the decade. What makes it soar above and beyond is the stellar direction and fluid animation of the team at Cloverworks that can cause me to smile and rejoice at the hope of these children in 1 minute, and in the next send me reeling backward in fear. I urge you to give it a chance with one episode. I promise that you won't want to miss a single beat of the rest of the season, and I personally can't wait for the continuation of the series. Truly, no other show has created so much cinematic tension in an episode about children playing tag. And the final entry in my top anime of the decade list goes to a new show whose rise to stardom is equally as fascinating a story as the one in which it successfully tells. The spring 2019 anime season gave rise to a myriad of phenomenal new shows, 2 of which are already on this list, and among them was Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, a series about a boy who comes home to discover his family has been slaughtered by demons, leaving only his younger sister Nezuko alive, but as a transformed demon herself. Tanjiro searches for a way to cure his sister while protecting any who might face the same fate, and joins the ranks of the Demon Slayer Corps, vowing revenge on the demons that destroyed his family. At first, this supernatural show seemed like any other Monster of the Week shonen adventure, though carefully animated with the stunning 3D visuals I've come to expect from Ufotable. And it flew relatively under the radar to more popular shows like Attack on Titan and The Promised Neverland. That is until August 10th, 2019, when episode 19, Hinokami, translated to English as God of Fire, broke animation boundaries and viewing records with its stunning, dynamic, and world-twisting final scene. The moment this episode aired, the anime world was in a frenzy, calling the show out as an instant classic and pulling the rest of media culture into the anime world by making Demon Slayer a trending topic on Twitter. Now, I promised no spoilers, so I won't say exactly what happens in episode 19 that caused such a ruckus, but believe me when I say that Ufotable was able to pull together the story, sound design, animation, and camera direction to produce a deeply emotional response from me that I honestly haven't felt from an animation since I saw How to Train Your Dragon in theaters. I admit that there may be a recency bias here, as it was the latest show that I watched, but there's no doubt that this anime is breaking the boundaries of animation. Ufotable has always been a studio known for their use of 3D elements to garner dynamic and fluid action sequences, but this show has something beyond anything I've ever seen before, something that makes this show a complete work of art. Demon Slayer is the perfect example of what animation can do, of how, for some stories, animation is truly the best medium for the job. From the charming characters and relationship dynamics to the progressive cinematography and stylized action sequences, Demon Slayer more than merits its place as my #1 anime of the 2010s, and I hope that you'll join me in following the series into the decade to come. Japan isn't the only large contributor of animated media. The Western world has its own brand of animation series, and I've combed through my absolute favorite of the decade to bring you my top 10 Western animated series. This decade has brought about a change in media as a whole. Cable networks have lower viewer ratings, and most audiences use streaming services like Hulu and Amazon Prime to binge watch their favorite shows. Netflix has gone above and beyond most other streaming services to provide high-quality and original animated series, including the number 10 slot on this list, Voltron Legendary Defender. I have multiple Fanimated episodes on the show, but if you want a quick rundown, Voltron was animated by DreamWorks and its first season released on Netflix in June of 2016. After the first season aired, Voltron instantly found a following for its quirky characters and anime-style direction. Although somewhat lacking in plot consistency and planning, the captivating character development solidifies it as one of my favorite series of the decade, and I can't help but feel nostalgic over the many hours spent with friends geeking out over these dorky kids as they gallivant across the galaxy, saving planets and defeating purple aliens inside giant lion mecha robots. Cheesy, yeah, but that's exactly the kind of topping I like on my pizza. Number 9 goes to another Netflix original, Hilda, the UK-Canadian series based on the graphic novel of the same name by Luke Pearson. This delightfully charming series follows Hilda, a young girl living with her mother in the wilderness. When her mother moves them to the city, Hilda's world is turned upside down, but she finds solace in her extremely likable new friends David and Frida. These characters are the biggest reason why I love this show so much. Hilda is wild and adventurous, always befriending the magical and mysterious creatures that she encounters. Frida is a Hermione Granger-esque foil to Hilda's wild antics, while David is the softer, gentler soul of the trio. Watching this endearing group of friends explore their fantasy-infused world is an enormous treat. Both the writing and animation stand out from the crowd, and I just can't help but fall in love with Hilda. Another engaging series for the whole family to enjoy is my 8th entry, Tangled the Series. The title later changed to Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure. Following the events of Tangled, the 2010 Disney animation film, Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure starts off with Rapunzel's new life as Princess of Corona, but she isn't quite fitting the mold. And when her long golden locks magically return, more than her free spirit begins to call her to the world beyond the kingdom. First airing in March of 2017, the series is ending this January with its third and final season. Getting so much extra screen time to enjoy Rapunzel, Eugene, Pascal, Max, and the rest of their new friends has been such an extreme joy for me and anyone else who would call themselves a fan of the film. Along with all the voice actors returning for their roles, Alan Menken continues to compose beautiful and enriching new scores for the series that truly let the story soar. And what a story it is, with fascinating new characters, a deeper and wider world of magic and lore, and a handful of shocking twists and turns. This fully fleshed out series is more than I could have ever hoped for as a Tangled fan, and it more than fills the desire for more that the original film left in my heart. Designed, written, and performed with wit and ingenuity, Tangled the series has far and away been one of my favorite viewing experiences of the 2010s. Disney is at it again with Star vs. the Forces of Evil coming in at number 7. This wacky, wild show is a vibrant mess of color and character that blends Magic Girl anime into a Western sitcom-style show. A wild ride from start to finish, the plot really changes quite a bit from the first season to its final and fourth. But the basic formula that it all began with in 2015 is that of a wand-wielding princess named Star, who comes to Earth from another dimension to enroll in school and cause other people, including her best friend Marco, unrelenting stress as she tries to control her powers. Our duo of protagonists fight monsters and other forces of evil while trying to cope with the pressures of adolescence and high school drama. Although this seems par for the course for a Disney original series, what sets this show apart is the phenomenal dialogue by Darren Nefsey and her team of writers. This show takes wild twists and turns while keeping things real with character interactions that seem straight out of normal life. These characters don't feel like they're reading from a script, they just react to each other in refreshing ways that I really don't see from other shows. Although the overarching narrative is not as tightly woven as others on this list, Star vs. the Forces of Evil isn't afraid to delve deep into social and racial tensions while putting a scrutinizing lens on the consequences of colonialism. For more of my thoughts on the series, be sure to check out our episode on Star vs. the Forces of Evil, but for now, know that it is certainly worth a watch if you haven't seen it already. In the decade that gave rise to so many money-grabbing Disney remakes that continue to plague our theaters, there is one revisited Disney license that not only satisfies my nostalgic cravings, but also manages to reinvigorate a story for a new generational audience in an impeccably satisfying way. I am, of course, talking about DuckTales. Over 20 years after the original show first aired, this reboot sets Huey, Dewey, and Louie on a new, yet familiar journey with their adventure-seeking family. A stellar voice cast, including David Tennant as our favorite duck billionaire, along with passionate writing, produces characters that are so easy to fall in love with. Not only do the triplets have their own unique personalities, struggles, and motivations, but their best friend Webby breaks down gender stereotypes much more brutally than its 80s counterpart. With eloquent, family-focused storytelling and a fascinating comic book-like animation style that gives tribute to the franchise's successful published series, there is very little to scrutinize and everything to adore about the 2017 DuckTales series. Anything co-created by Aaron Ehasz, one of the masterminds behind the exceptionally successful Avatar: The Last Airbender series, was bound to have high expectations attached to it. And thanks to its captivating characters and magical world building, The Dragon Prince delivers. However, with the first season released in September 2018, The Dragon Prince started on Netflix with somewhat mixed reviews. The plot seemed pretty cookie-cutter, and that animation, that reduced frame rate animation. It was definitely enough to put some people off from the series, so the first season was quite a mixed bag. But proving that in a world where it's easier than ever for creators to connect with their audiences, tailoring to critiques can be a huge blessing, the Dragon Prince team has come back with every subsequent season looking and feeling better than ever. Described by its creators as a Game of Thrones for kids, The Dragon Prince follows Callum and Ezrin, two princes of the human realm in which the 6 primal magical elements are rare. Instead, humans use a form called dark magic to release elements out of magically connected creatures. In a world literally divided between magical creatures, like elves and dragons, and the land of humans, Callum and Ez task themselves with returning a once-stolen dragon egg to the Queen of Dragons in the hopes of reuniting the two realms and returning peace to a land on the brink of war. Joining them is Moonshadow elf Rayla, assassin-turned-friend, who hopes to reignite a family legacy ruined by her parents, who were unable to save the Dragon Prince egg from being taken in the first place. This unlikely trio has a ton of heart, and every character they interact with on their journey is oozing with magical charm. With characters that are easy to root for and a fascinating political plot that drives its many moving pieces forward, The Dragon Prince easily makes up for its lack of visual prowess. Though the 3D stylistic animation is certainly a first, the experiment doesn't really land with audiences and ends up just looking choppy and uncomfortable. Although Season 2 and beyond heralded in a slightly less jarring axe to the frame rate, it is still not the kind of eye candy I usually like to indulge in. Regardless, the other elements of this show more than make up for it, and The Dragon Prince rightfully deserves its place as number 5 of my top favorite animated series of the decade. Known for his explorations of how we perceive monsters, Guillermo del Toro, the creative mind behind Pan's Labyrinth and The Shape of Water, brings us an original animated series about trolls that lurk beneath an unassuming town. Troll Hunters: Tales of Arcadia first aired on Netflix in December of 2013 to immediate success. Del Toro is no stranger to animation, having worked on multiple animated projects in the past and having a track record for supporting and influencing DreamWorks films. Del Toro's Troll Hunters is a story of Jim Lake, an adventurous high school kid who stumbles upon a magical amulet that has chosen him to become the next troll hunter, a title that names him the protector of troll kind. The first human to assume the role, Jim proves that it is only with the help of our friends that we can become a true hero. With phenomenal 3D animation and a refreshing and engaging story, Troll Hunters is easily one of my favorite shows of the decade. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on the show, be sure to listen to our episode on Troll Hunters. All right, here we are with another top 3 that seem impossible to pit against each other, but rank them I did. Even though all 3 of these easily deserve the top spot, just know that all 3 of these shows hold an extremely special place in my heart, and they sit among some of the best series of all time. In the fall of 2012, I was just starting college and still trying to make new friends as I adjusted to not only a different city, but an entirely new state. One new acquaintance, later turned best friend, recommended a Disney show that started releasing the previous summer. Curious, I climbed atop my lofted bunk in my shoebox of a dorm room and began a journey that would pull me into the joys of a fandom I still cherish to this day. Gravity Falls was not only a great show, but a particularly fascinating experience, one that can't be recreated by simply watching it. What sticks in my memory the most are the times in between episodes airing. It was the breaks in scheduling and long hiatuses that this show truly shined. Because Alex Hirsch and the rest of the Gravity Falls team were, and in many ways still are, deeply connected to their fan base online. The countless hours I spent theorizing with other fans on Tumblr, watching decoding videos on YouTube, or getting my questions answered by Alex Hirsch himself on Reddit were hours of joy-filled fun that bridged the gap between myself and countless other fans and the show on the other side of the screen in a surreal way. Aside from my own personal experiences with the show, Gravity Falls is an impeccably written adventure about the supernatural happenings in the fictional town of Gravity Falls, Oregon. The show's premise was inspired by Hirsch's own childhood experiences, obsessing about aliens, secret messages, and Bigfoot sightings. The central relationship of the series, that of twins, Mabel and Dipper, was also influenced by Hirsch's time growing up with a twin sister of his own. Along with many other characters and events of this series, this personal connection shows in Hirsch's writing and brings depth and complexity to the character interactions that are the heart of the series. A captivating comedy that set an entire fandom ablaze by opening up exciting opportunities for audience interaction, Gravity Falls is a brilliant work of passionate writing, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did this past decade. With 3 Fanimated episodes already devoted to this lovable magical boy and his 3 alien aunts, it comes as no surprise that Steven Universe ranks high on my list of top animated series of the 2010s. A show that has swept away the competition with the power of a terraforming lapis lazuli, this masterpiece created by Rebecca Sugar and first airing in 2013 is known for its breathtaking music, depth of lore, and dazzling exploration of socially taboo subjects like mental health and sexuality. There is no denying the scope and impact of this internationally acclaimed series, and since I've delved so deeply on the topic before, I encourage you to listen to those episodes instead of me taking more of your time here. Instead, I trust that if you haven't already, you'll seek out the true magic found in Steven Universe and join the fandom as we move into the next decade. With the original series having completed its resolution after 5 seasons and a new show, Steven Universe Future, leading the franchise, I can still hear the laments from across the globe singing, "It's over, isn't it? Why can't I move on?" It's hard to describe how the shortest series on this list nuzzled its way into my heart and climbed into the #1 spot as my favorite Western animated series of the decade. But what isn't difficult to interpret is the work of masterful animation and storytelling that is Over the Garden Wall. Airing over the course of 1 week in November 2014, Over the Garden Wall is a short series of 10 episodes produced by Cartoon Network and created by Patrick McHale. The show is a journey of two brothers as they wander through the woods searching for a way back home. This simple premise creates a blank canvas on which McHale and the entire artistic team create a work of awe-inspiring genius. Inspired by 19th and 20th century Americana, the visual development, musical direction, and character design make for a unique and unforgettable atmosphere. Within a world of dancing pumpkins and singing frogs, McHale subtly pulls his audience along with Wirt, Greg, Beatrice, and other memorable characters to explore the themes of death, hope, and the strength of brotherhood. For more on this show, listen to our Fanimated episode that delves even deeper into the story and characters that have solidified Over the Garden Wall as one of the most impactful shows of the 2010s. Moving on to our final category, the 2010s were a phenomenal time for animated films. The continued rise of computer animation gave way to enormous developments in the medium, as well as several studios going back to traditional roots to explore how computers can assist 2D animated features as well. With so many studios creating masterful works, let's dive into my top 10 favorite animated films of the 2010s. Not surprising, based off my favorite animated series list, we start out on number 10 with Tangled, the 2010 Disney animated film that takes an enchanting twist to the classic Rapunzel fairy tale, as well as updating the classic Disney princess formula for a new generation. After 6 years of production and over $260 million, Disney's 50th animated feature continues to sit as the most expensive animated film of all time. To put that in perspective, Tangled costs more money to make than Star Wars: The Force Awakens or any one of the Harry Potter films. And as Disney's first 3D-generated princess film, Tangled also paved the way for the Monolith Studios' ascendance into its current revival era. All of that would be enough to grant Tangled a spot on my list, but it is also one of my favorite films of the 2010s due to its beautiful visual style, emotional score, and endearing story. Here at Fanimated, we've already broken down all those aspects in a previous episode, and I hope you'll hear my thoughts there as well. Even now, Tangled continues to delight audiences and stands above the other Disney princess films thanks to its quirky, fun, and memorable characters. And it was certainly part of a fantastic year and a decade for the animation industry. Sticking in the realm of fairy tales and legends, my number 9 pick is Song of the Sea, a cartoon saloon production that gives life to an enchanting world of Irish mythology. Exploring this world are siblings Ben and Saoirse, whose charming and delightful relationship is the heart of this epic adventure. As the duo try to get home, they run into fairies, witches, and selkies, revealing not only magic within the world, but also the magic residing in themselves. The visual style and stunning animation create their own sense of magic, as the film truly feels like a storybook come to life. Not to mention the soundtrack, that successfully aims to heighten the bewitching atmosphere. A solid original international film of 2014, I can't help but also connect with the film due to being introduced to it during my visit to its country of origin. If there is anything that will get you longing for more of Ireland, it's the rich tapestry that is woven with Song of the Sea. In 8th place is the 2012 Studio Chizu film Wolf Children. A plot following a single mother as she raises her 2 young children may seem unexceptional, but when those kids happen to be half wolf, this story turns into a charming and captivating adventure. With smooth, traditional animation and fantastic pacing, this film becomes a window into the life of Hana as she falls in love, raises a family, and struggles to care for her children when her husband unexpectedly dies. The challenge of raising two young ones alone may sound difficult enough, but when her daughter and son occasionally turn into wolves and have yet to control their animal instincts, the situations become increasingly problematic. A story of family, freedom, and self-acceptance, Wolf Children is a stunning drama and charming slice-of-life comedy rolled into one. It certainly ranks as one of the best Japanese films in my collection and is one I can't recommend highly enough. If anything, this mesmerizing tale will have you immediately calling your mother to thank her for everything she's done for you. Releasing on Netflix in November 2019, Klaus barely makes the time window, but more than meets the impact requirements for this list. A work from Sergio Pablos Animation Studios, Klaus is a pleasant Christmas adventure that attempts to reframe the legend of Santa Claus and explore his humble beginnings. When Jesper, the spoiled son of the head of the Royal Postal Academy, is forcibly enrolled by his father, Jesper purposely fails in the hopes of getting sent home to his more luxurious lifestyle. Discouraged by Jesper's lackluster performance as a student, his father instead sends him to the small northern island of Smeerensburg with an ultimatum. Jesper will need to post 6,000 letters in 1 year or else be cut off from the family fortune. Jesper finds himself in a village defined by the ever-going feud between families Crumb and Ellingbo. The locals communicate through vile deeds rather than letters, so Jesper is at a loss for how to complete his 6,000 letter quota. That is, until he comes across Mr. Klaus, an intimidating and secluded woodsman who happens to have a hoard of handmade toys in his barn. Jesper devises a scheme in which the kids must send a letter in order to receive a free toy, delivered by Jesper and Mr. Klaus every night. The adventures of their late-night shifts eventually result in a powerful friendship and crafts a beautiful story of hope and the power of kindness. Klaus was written and directed by Sergio Pablos, who had a vision to take the past into the present by bringing traditional 2D animation up to speed with current modern times. Not only is this a production with artistic visuals unlike anything we've seen before, but the story and heart of the film have created an instant Christmas classic. That is why Klaus sits as number 7 of my favorite animated films of the decade. Surprisingly, Klaus isn't the only film on this list that features the jolly old Saint Nick. Rise of the Guardians is the 2012 DreamWorks movie that takes the 6th spot on my list. DreamWorks is a studio that holds a special place in my history, mostly for their Dragons franchise, but also for their works like Rise of the Guardians. Although the studio can create some real duds on occasion, when they hit the mark, it's a bullseye through and through, as it is with this film about 5 legendary characters who team up together to fight darkness and fear. Although Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, and the Sandman are all featured in this film, my favorite of the bunch is the film's protagonist, Jack Frost. Rising out of a frozen pond hundreds of years ago, Jack is brought to life by the Man in the Moon, but is never really told why. Because of this, and regardless of his power, nobody can see Jack, and nobody believes he's real. Throughout the film, Jack struggles with this and to find his identity and purpose. And while Pitch, our boogeyman protagonist, voiced by the phenomenal Jude Law, spreads fear throughout the world, Jack discovers not only the truth about his past, but finds the special core he possesses that has the power to save them all. And does that power look amazing? The animation in the opening scene alone is so completely awe-inspiring to me, and that's why Rise of the Guardians is on this list. The painstaking detail that went into the textures, lighting, and acting in the animation brings me so much wonder and joy. And although 8 years is definitely enough to show its age in relation to more recent computer animated titles, it still holds a place in my heart as one of my favorite animated films of the decade. 5 is my favorite Studio Ghibli film of the decade, but surprisingly, it's not one of the many that studio co-founder and famed animator Hayao Miyazaki directed. From Up on Poppy Hill was instead directed by his son, Goro Miyazaki, and sits as one of my favorite Studio Ghibli films of all time. Perhaps you can tell by my love of wolf children, but I admire slower-paced films that let the story and situations breathe, and From Up on Poppy Hill does it beautifully. There is space in this film to just spend time with the characters and be a part of their daily lives and how their simple story unfolds. That is, before the second act, when the plot ramps up and tensions get high. But truly, the way this film is able to manipulate the viewer's heart with carefully crafted relationships and plot reveals absolutely floors me every time. And it isn't just the writing and direction we have to thank for this roller coaster of a film. I must give credit to the absolutely phenomenal score and sound direction. Every beat of this film's heart is in the music that underlays it, and I can't express enough how much I adore this soundtrack. The plot is really something you must experience for yourself, but to start, From Up on Poppy Hill takes place in Japan before the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, in a country still recovering from the Korean War and aiming to prove to the world that Japan is looking to the future. But not everyone is excited about tearing down the old to make way for the new. The kids at Asugo High School work to save their old clubhouse that is set for demolition. But as they toil to spruce up the building, and as schoolgirl Umi and her classmate Shun begin a budding affection for one another, the once dusty clubhouse is not the only element that is brought to light. Another true masterpiece of a film, and one that challenges the desire to leave the past behind us, 2013's From Up on Poppy Hill is my favorite Studio Ghibli film of the decade. Another one of my favorite animation studios is Laika Animation, known for their spectacular works of stop-motion animation and puppetry. This has been a fantastic decade for Laika, with titles such as Box Trolls and The Missing Link, to name a few. But my favorite work of theirs over the past 10 years is their 2016 film Kubo and the Two Strings. As the number 4 spot on my list, Kubo and the Two Strings provides exceptional animation, music, story, and design to create a memorable and lasting film. It follows young musician and storyteller Kubo as he starts a journey in search of a magical set of armor to protect himself from his grandfather, the evil Moon King. On his journey, and with the help of his friends Monkey and Beetle, he grows into his magical abilities while learning the truth of the fate of his family. Again, there's another full Fanimated episode on the topic that I suggest that you listen to, but to summarize, Kubo is a film that continues to break stop-motion animation records and has the heart and charm that all Laika content possesses. A legend for the ages and a film for the decade, Kubo and the Two Strings has been a difficult contender to beat for favorite stop-motion film, but I'm sure Laika has even more up their sleeve going into the 2020s. Another film that breaks the mold and third on my list of top animated films of the decade is Sony Animation's 2018 film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Winner of numerous awards and critically acclaimed by the animation industry to be a giant leap forward in terms of computer animation capabilities, Into the Spider-Verse is an eye-popping take on the Miles Morales Spider-Man story. This film is an absolute must-watch for any moviegoer. The action and comedy is spot on, and the visuals are absolutely captivating. Even those unfamiliar with Spider-Man or untouched by the superhero obsession that has swept across Hollywood will find something to love about this film. I've thoroughly expressed my love of this movie in our Into the Spider-Verse Fanimated episode, and I recommend giving it a listen for my own full rundown. But what the team at Sony Animation was able to accomplish with this film is truly a breakthrough into a new dimension, and I'm looking forward to what the studio can accomplish in the future. Mikado Shinkai has been exploring computer animation and its uses within the traditional medium since his first short film in 1998. Since then, he has continued to master the craft of creating hyper-realistic traditional animation that stands out with fascinating 3D effects. Along with his perfectionist style visually, Shinkai's writing has always focused on the theme of love in the space of long-distance relationships, whether that be the other side of the world or on another world entirely. My second favorite film of the decade, Your Name, explores the theme of distance in a whole new way, and is expertly expressed with the stunning signature detail from the film's writer and director. The plot focuses on high school students Taki and Mitsuha, one of which lives with his father in the bustling city of Tokyo, while the latter's home is in a small country town. The two's lives intersect when they wake up in each other's bodies and have to find a way to live in the other's lives. As the two switch between bodies every few days with no warning, our protagonists end up getting to know one another and changing each other's lives throughout their switched days. An engrossing, humorous, and deeply poignant story, I am always in awe of the original stories by Shinkai. In 2016, Your Name exploded in the Japanese box office and eventually lit the flame for international success and acclaim as well. Your Name knocked Hayao Miyazaki's 2001 film Spirited Away off its long-standing pedestal as the highest-grossing anime film of all time. As for me, Your Name and its stunning animation garner it as one of the best animated works of the decade, and that's not to mention the incredible writing that surpasses and delights with every turn. I can't recommend this film highly enough. Please, for the love of all that is beautiful in this world, go watch Your Name. Since this is my own personal list of favorites, there is still one film, and entire franchise for that matter, that I have yet to discuss. This film changed my views on what animation can do and propelled my passion for animation forward throughout the decade. How to Train Your Dragon, DreamWorks' 2010 film, along with its two sequels, sit at the top of my list of favorite animated films of the 2010s. I have talked so much about How to Train Your Dragon. In every episode, it seems I'm bringing something up from the films. And you can hear all of my thoughts about How to Train Your Dragon in our episode solely focused on the topic. If you're still somehow unfamiliar, the story follows young Viking boy Hiccup as he strives to take down a dragon, hoping it will increase his social status along with improving his relationship with his father. Instead, Hiccup befriends the Night Fury dragon Toothless and embarks on an adventure to save both dragons and Vikings from the continued threat they both face, and unite their worlds despite a tradition of hatred and fear. Based on the novels by Cressida Cowell, the film takes a unique spin on the setup, but keeps all of Cowell's charm and heart at the center of the story. Director and writer duo Chris Sanders and Dean DuBois, the animators behind Disney's successful 2002 film Lilo and Stitch, have created such an impactful story about individuality and belonging, and I will always treasure this film in high esteem. When I was 16 and saw How to Train Your Dragon in theaters for the first time, I was left with a deep astonishment at what this film could do and what all animation does to a compelling narrative. Yes, I've always loved animated films, and yes, I can name countless titles that have fed the flame for that passion, but How to Train Your Dragon will remain a turning point in my personal journey. It marks a time when I started to dive deeper into the process of how a team of artists, writers, actors, sound designers, musicians, and animators can come together to create something truly magical. How to Train Your Dragon will always remain my favorite animated film, not only of the 2010s, but of my entire life so far. And as we look to the future, I look forward to the day that a new film can fill these dragon-sized shoes. So there you have it, my top 10 list of the 2010s. Thanks so much for sticking through this. It was a lot of fun to write out, and I'd love to do more scripted shows like this in the future if you like it. There are already a lot of Fanimated episodes on many of these topics, so I encourage you to go back through our feed and listen to any that piqued your interest. If I haven't made an episode on one of these topics yet, expect me to do so eventually. Every single title on these lists are amazing, and I definitely want to talk about them in the future. In the meantime, go watch all these amazing titles for yourself. I highly recommend each one, and I truly think they are worthy of these lists, although my own personal biases and preferences did make a difference. Is there something I didn't mention but I should have? What are on your top 10 lists of the decade? Let me know by emailing me at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com or messaging me on Facebook or Instagram at fanimatedpodcast. A reminder that Fanimated is going on tour. Our first stop is February 7th at KunPaiCon in Omaha, Nebraska. You can see the full tour schedule at fanimated.weebly.com/tour, and we hope to see you at one of our stops this year. As always, the music is provided by Purple Planet Music, and the art is done by myself. You can follow me in all of my fan art escapades at Candor Draw. That's Kander Draw. Thanks again for listening and having patience during this long winter hiatus. I am so looking forward to another decade full of fantastic animation to discuss. I'll talk to you soon, and in the meantime, stay tuned and stay animated. So every episode of the podcast, we talk about things we've been watching recently, and I just wanted to throw it out there that I just saw Weathering with You by Makoto Shinkai. That is the writer-director of Your Name, which was my number 2 movie of the decade. So Weathering with You was beautiful and wonderful, and I highly, highly, highly encourage you to go see it. It is in theaters in the US right now, finally, and it has the same absolute beauty and oh man, the 3D effects are just so beautiful and well done and just well crafted, and the story is so beautiful, and I just love it, and it makes me even more excited to see what Shinkai will do in the future. I highly, highly, highly encourage you to watch it. It is beautiful. I've talked before on the podcast about how difficult it is to animate water. It's hard to make things look wet, and rain in general is so time consuming because there's every single droplet is hand drawn, and in this film it's just breathtaking and astounding and awe-inspiring, and just my hat is off to Shinkai and his team for this phenomenal film, and I implore you, for your own sake, go see this film in theaters. You will not regret it. Thanks again, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.